The Spirituality Now podcast is sponsored by Delaflor Teachings International, a spiritual and systemic coaching and consulting company with the mission to help individuals, businesses, and corporations create brilliant futures through sustainable transformation. Also sponsored by the Network for Human Empowerment, a philanthropic TV network that serves Spanish-speaking communities with free, conscious education aimed to empower individuals to become the best versions of themselves. And our podcast producer, Ascend Media, Authority Syndication, delivering premium video marketing, podcast production, and social syndication.
Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast, a podcast committed to supporting you in your journey to life mastery and personal enlightenment. Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast. I am your host, Yvonne de la Flor, a very relaxed, happy host because I am doing this podcast recording honestly with one of my favorite faters. I'm going to call him fater. Humans, friends, mentors for me, for my soul. And I'm also in Cancun, Mexico. And I'm listening to the ocean as a background. I'm in a pretty nice room doing this work. It feels pretty chill, and you'll know why in a moment. why the word chill is going to be appearing in our conversation, and that's what we're gonna do. So I don't want to do any announcement today. We're just gonna go into conversation. I have an incredible guest, and I say incredible is more credible, whom I love. You know, his bio, I'm going to just share it from my heart, what I've learned from him. And he obviously eventually will have the microphone, not me, to share with you. But he truly is a master, I believe, in sales, business, but also isness. And when I say isness is because, I've been privileged enough to learn from him. I really didn't know anything about how to sell, to serve people. I was more into the serve to sell and get it done and hustle and torture yourself and charge nothing or charge a lot or don't know how to charge. And I was missing the key aspect of adding value. I was missing the key aspects of really genuinely serving people by being the best you came here to be and being an expert in the area of your mastery. And that this is only one of the things that I got to learn from him. But what really called my attention when I was able to study with our guest and learn from him and become friends, his name is Kevin Nations, Mr. Kevin Nations, is the level of faith. I truly believe we had a connection based on faith that he has. And his awareness and wisdom regarding around faith is so refreshing because I've never heard anyone talk about faith like he does. So with that said, that's the bio I'm going to share. I'm going to let him share with you. Let me introduce you to my beloved friend, mentor, Mr. Kevin Nations. Welcome, Kevin.
Yvonne, it's always an honor to talk to you privately, publicly, in whatever format. So it's my privilege to be here.
Kevin, and as you know, let's begin. You know, I met you through a mastermind that you used to have. You have a mastermind right now, and just share with us a little bit about like where does Kevin Nations creates itself as the Kevin Nations that you are today? Where does it begin? I know it's a very broad question, but I just want to begin like somewhere where Kevin Nations of today build, the businesses you did, the wisdom you did. Where does it come from? Where does Kevin Nations comes from today?
That's an interesting question, and one I've not been asked before. I think one of the first things that caused me to respond in life, and I didn't really see the impact on those responses in today's business practice until I started practicing business more. But I grew up within the Christian church, and much of my family was for 4 generations at positions of fairly significant impact and authority. And one of the things that I noticed within that group of people is that many times the people that were the most prolific and the most emphatic in their talking and teaching and practices, many times those were the people that were perhaps, not to be unkind, but were the least kind and the least generous and the lesser example of what I actually thought that, kind leadership would be. And some of the people that were less prolific were actually more powerful when it came to just dealing with individuals. I didn't know what I wanted to be at that age. I grew up in rural Mississippi, really, really poor, but I knew I began to see early and wanted to follow the example that many times there is a difference between volume and value, like the volume of a singer. The fact that they can raise the volume of their amplification doesn't necessarily mean that their voice gets any better. And I made a decision at that point to work to have, a more clear voice rather than a more loud one.
I love that. I love that. And you remind me of a poet called Rumi, that he says, I'm just paraphrasing right now, that he says, you don't have to raise your voice to speak to the flowers. It says, I'm just making it short, but I really love that volume, the difference between volume and value. And when you made that decision, so how do you, and I'm going to already start to talk about faith, because I truly feel you are one of the strongest proponents. I think that's how you said it, but proponents and embodied leaders, teachers, business owners, where faith is just like a natural expression of beingness. So where does faith comes into play with whom Kevin Nations is and what Kevin Nations choose to do and how Kevin Nations choose to serve the people that you serve?
Interestingly enough, I don't actively practice the Christian faith that much anymore, nor do I not practice it. I just try to be. But a really, really powerful excerpt from the Bible that was written, I believe, by the Apostle Paul. He said, faith is the substance of that for which we hope, and it's the evidence of that which we can't yet see. So I think about that, like faith is walking out, onto a tightrope, with the confidence that you are not going to fall. When someone's told you, have faith, this is designed such that you won't fall. It's taking an action before there's any evidence that that action will play out. It happens in relationships. It happens in our relationship with our soul. It happens in our relationship with our money, and with our partners, with our friends. And so basically faith itself becomes the evidence. A lot of people say, well, I'll have faith in something that, when I see some evidence, but then that's evidentiary feedback. It's not necessarily faith. Faith is trust without evidence, so that faith becomes the evidence.
Wow, I love it. Faith is trust without evidence. And that takes me into to faith that really transcends just the concept of religion. And I'm glad that you kind of differentiated when you were sharing right now. That is not that you practice the Christian religion, but the faith in it, the trust in things, the trust in people. I think I heard you once I believe in a gathering that we were having in Hawaii. Back in the days of the family mastermind that you used to have, that you said to someone in the group, they said, "I don't have faith," or "I don't have faith in myself," and you said to them, "You can borrow my faith." That created such an impact on me. I actually pass it on sometimes to my students and the people I serve. I said, "I believe in you. You can borrow my belief in you for a moment." Could you expand a little bit more in that? Because you truly are someone that has so much faith. I remember when I first met you, like I had my first like one-on-one session with you, and the conviction in which you shared, I think you had more belief in me at that moment that I had on myself. And then when you transferred that faith, that belief, I was like, I'm doing my own mastermind. I'm doing my own thing. So could you expand a little bit more about that faith, and having people borrow your faith? What do you mean by that?
I actually don't recall that situation, but if we go back to what I just mentioned, that, actual faith of itself was having trust without a significant amount of evidence, and that faith becomes the evidence. Well, if we esteem somebody highly and they say, "I believe you can do it," their belief in us becomes evidence for us. So even though we can't have faith, which is belief without any evidence, by seeing that someone we trust believes in us and says that they believe we can do it, we then begin to believe perhaps that we can do it based on seeing them believing in us, and we take a step forward and we don't fail. Or if we fail, we recover. And, there's a difference between failing and learning and mortally failing. I think that failure is an important part of teaching us to have the journey forward, because if we fail and then we learn that recovery is likely and imminent, and it's a learning experience rather than, failing is some sort of terminal condition, then sometimes failure can boost our faith, and we move into practices and taking on responsibilities that actually invite failure quickly, just so we can begin to learn from it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Thank you for that. And this faith that you speak of, I can feel it. I can feel it, that evidence of faith in itself in everything you are sharing, especially in business. And I'm going to move into that aspect of business and that aspect of sales and money. There was something that you shared once, and I feel I think I've paraphrased you a couple of times, but where you shared, now I'm moving from faith to money, which is, I believe, is going to be one-on-one supported. That you said that money is an accelerator. It takes you faster where you were already going, right? And can you expand on that one? Because I have different questions that I want to ask you, and I'm moving from faith to money, and then we'll unite them. Maybe they're not separate.
Maybe, maybe not. We'll find out at least what we believe as we go through, because you were asking some great questions. For sure, a lot of people, I think, say, well, when I get money, that, I will do this differently or more. And money is both, as in all cyclical assets, money's both the fruit of our efforts, but it's also the seed of our efforts. And so likely what we've been investing our money in when we have a little will likely be very similar to what we invest our money in when we have a lot. We just may invest in it more. So if we're investing in reinforcing poor behaviors when we have a little, we will likely find ways to more elaborate, more costly ways to invest in those same things when we have a lot. If we're making wise decisions when we have a little, we'll be able to make wise decisions with more, speed and substance when we have a lot. So I think that money, people look at progress in life, money is a fuel that allows us to move forward more quickly and more reliably.